Okay, I'll call this regular meeting of council to order. If everyone can please rise for the national anthem. I'll now ask if there are any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none, we have one delegation tonight. So we have Mr. Bob Liddycoat here, who is presenting regarding issues arising through changes to parking and public access to public properties in the Maplewood, Woodland, and Lakeshore area. So Bob, if you don't mind coming up to the podium, and there's a little button there, and when that lights up, you're good to go.
Well, maybe. Okay, well, I am Bob Liddycoat. I live at 10565 Maplewood. And recent changes to the parking on our streets have caused many of my neighbors, not just me, to be upset because nobody there was given any input or asked. There was no public meetings, nothing. Now, I read your report when you guys decided to do this, and there was a comment in there about some complaints, and that may have been, but nobody I talked to ever heard of it. And furthermore, now we're getting tickets on our property, sometimes nowhere near the road. Meanwhile, down the road, lots of cars parking, lots of times, no tickets. And again, lots of rumors out there, lots of hearsay, and it's all indicative of no communication. And I read your report saying it's a safety issue. That's a great trump card to play, no problem, I get that. But why now? I've been there 16 years, there are people there 40 years, there are 2 firemen on the street, never had a problem, never had a complaint. And now, there's nowhere for us to go. I got 2 cars and a motorcycle, can't legally fit in my own driveway because it's shared, and I parked my motorcycle sideways. So there's no room, and we got water trucks, we got septic trucks. What are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? Park on our front lawns? I don't think anybody wants to do that. We have to have some provision for parking. I mean, we've had guests ticketed, and they are in the driveway. It's ridiculous. And there's other letters there, I know, from other people. And believe me, I heard from a lot of people who saw my name on the list tonight. It's not just me. This was brought about as a knee-jerk reaction to the opening of that beach. Yeah, the emergency thing's a great angle, but it never happened until the beach was expanded, till the parking was expanded, till people were invited to come there on a regular basis, putting up washrooms with no input again. Nobody asked us what we wanted in the neighborhood, ever. No communication. And there should have been some public input into all of this. And the bottom line is we need a solution. We need places to park other than our driveway. It's just a reality. What are we going to do? There's no room, and I'm not the only one, believe me.
Okay, so that's a presentation. Are there any, and I think you left us with something as well.
Yeah, you saw, I sent some pictures across because the inconsistency, the guy who got a ticket, I gave permission to a friend to park in my brother's driveway. The fence of his property is past the car, but he gets a ticket. Where's this mystical line that no one knows about? You look down my street, the one picture I have, you'll see that none of those lines line up. So are we supposed to know where this imaginary line is? And if you're only lining up with one point, that's not a line. So you stand here, the car is good. You stand here, it's not good. And again, when those signs went up, no one came to us and said, okay, from now on, you can't do this. Nobody.
Questions for Mr. Liddycoat from council members? Alderman Dykstra?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Liddycoat, for presentation. Have you spoken with the bylaw, or has anybody from the town been out to?
A lot of people have. I haven't directly. And again, I kind of took it with a grain of salt because there was a lot of rumors and a lot of stuff. Frankly, you know, I think it's exaggerated. I'm given the benefit of the doubt on that. But we're getting ticketed for sure. And we're getting phone calls. I mean, it feels like harassment. Believe me, there's a lot of people use that word. Knocking on our doors, telling us to move our cars when we're in our property.
If I may continue, Madam Mayor, maybe, Mark, could you speak to the area at all, or are you familiar with the ongoings down there? Could you maybe update us a little bit?
Through you, Madam Mayor. This is definitely an issue. The no parking was brought in before I started. Last year, like I said, before the new parking bylaw came into effect, that last summer wasn't a very good summer, so there wasn't a lot of people in the area. This summer, obviously, it's very hot. People are using the beaches, the quarries. Excuse me. The issues that are arising are people are parking on the municipal road allowances. Some people have extended their driveways to encroach onto the municipal road allowance, which is a no parking zone under the bylaw. So they have been given tickets. The reason that our officer goes up and knocks on the door is so he doesn't have to give a ticket, just to inform the people that this is a violation of the bylaw, and he asks them to move the vehicle. That's a courtesy that I've asked him to do, is if you can get someone to move their car, move the car. So I do understand there is parking issues there. The whole reason in the new parking bylaw, that there's that residential permit parking, that is for the Woodlawn Maplewood area. However, as of right now, the roads are too narrow to allow that. But we are ready to go for that once the roads do get widened.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if I can continue, I'm just wondering, and I don't know whether our CAO would like to speak to it. I'm just wondering how could we get everybody in the same room and discuss the issue. If you're saying yourself, there's an issue there. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how to just say, like, let's just fix this. But I mean, how do we get a workable solution for the residents as well as the municipality?
So through you, Madam Mayor, that's a very good question. These, like I said, these rules were put in place before I started. I was under the impression that all of this stuff was done. Residents should have been notified. These parking signs have been up for 2 years and nobody's questioned it.
Not on our street.
Until now.
Not on our street, they haven't.
Madam Mayor, through you to council. Perhaps one of the things that we as staff can do is attempt to schedule a night where bylaw enforcement, operations perhaps, myself, can invite the residents to attend. We can sit down with them. We can run through a bit of, again, the history that has been shared through council. We can provide the residents of the area some idea of what our enforcement efforts, and we can get some feedback from the residents with some ideas about where things can go moving forward. And then once we've had that meeting, perhaps we could come back to council with a report sort of outlining the entire situation. We'd probably want to make sure that we choose a night that is workable for all the residents involved. So if you give us some time to work on that, we'll take that as direction and move forward in that way.
Yes, would we need a motion for that, or would it be something staff would handle internally, or?
Through you, Madam Mayor, perhaps a motion receiving the delegation and directing staff to proceed with consultation and engagement with the residents in the area.
Before we make that motion, can I just ask, Mark, do you know, I know you weren't here when this was implemented, but did we implement no parking on Quarry Road first, and then we did this? Because my memory, and council, I'm thinking some of you will remember why we did this, but I thought we did no parking on Quarry Road because of complaints we were having about people using the quarry in ways that they shouldn't. And then from there, people were parking down the side streets because they could no longer park on Quarry Road. So then we had a complaint, I don't remember how many. So then we implemented this bylaw and then created more parking at Reeves Bay. So just for context, I mean, obviously we're going to review this because it's becoming an issue for the residents, but Richard, do you remember?
Your worship, to all members of council, yes, that's exactly what happened. There was a lot of complaints, including the MPCA, regarding the parking, so it became a no parking on Quarry Road. And then the complaints started coming in from the residents that everybody was parking on their properties on the two side streets, so that's why council implemented that one.
So looking then for a motion, so we're going to revisit this and see if we can find a solution. So a motion to receive and then refer to staff to coordinate that public meeting. So moved by Alderman Dykstra and seconded by Alderman Conk. So any questions on the motion to receive and then refer back to staff? Alderman Hessels?
Yeah, I'm kind of for that, but I don't know if we could actually get staff to come up with a few, maybe some different recommendations, because, yeah, looking at the map, that road runs, some places, the road allowance is real close, other places, there's lots of room that parking wouldn't be an issue on their property. It's not a safety issue. So I'm not sure if we should have them come with a staff report with different options and then have them options come to council and then get the public involved after that, or you want to do it before, have them give you all the things?
Through you, Madam Mayor, my suggestion would be that perhaps we meet with the residents first to get their feedback, which might inform our options and recommendations coming back. And there's always opportunity for additional public consultation afterwards as well. So my recommendation, at least for the time being, is let's start off with the residents in the area and then go from there.
Okay, so if there aren't any further questions, then I'll call the question on that motion. All those in favor, and that is carried. So then staff will follow up with Mr. Liddycoat then to when we'll send out a notice to those residents and we'll go from there.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
One other thing. One of the pictures I sent you was a car ticketed on my brother's property, and like I said, 2 or 3 feet behind his fence. I have a copy of that ticket right now. I would like it expunged because it's ridiculous. Who can I leave this with?
Mark, there's an appeal process, so I don't know what the timing is or when that ticket was issued, but if you want to let Mr. Liddycoat know how to go about that.
Through you, Madam Mayor, this ticket was already challenged. The challenge was denied. I don't know if council wants me to go into details, but it was denied. So they do have an option of appealing the screening officer's decision, and we can get that information to him tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, I don't want to drag this out, but you saw the pictures. Dozens of cars parked closer to the road than that one. No tickets. Cars, trucks on Quarry Road, over the line on the road. No tickets. How you could turn this one down is beyond me. And I also just want to make one comment about the safety issue. Giving tickets is not going to help you over by the quarry where the loading station is for the pumpers. You got to find a way to keep them out of there. If they're parked there and they got a ticket, they're still in the way.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the presentation, and then staff will follow up.
Thanks.
Okay, so we don't have any presentations tonight, and we don't have any public hearings, but we do have my mayor's remarks. So just quickly, I was pleased to see our new premier on Saturday in Pelham, so we had a chance to meet with him briefly, and I was glad to see that he was down in Niagara so soon, so we're hoping he will return on a regular basis. And I want to congratulate our 11 new recruits in the fire department and thank them for all the hours dedicated from everyone involved, and especially this past weekend. I know it was very busy weekend for them, and a lot of good reviews in the paper. I mean, I know the circumstances aren't good, but they a lot of really good articles about how hard they worked and took care of things quickly. And further to that, the fire ban has been lifted at this time, so the fire department will continue to monitor conditions. So we remind everyone to always use caution with all recreational fires as well as open and controlled burns. And I was reading reports for tomorrow's MPCA meeting, and they continue to monitor the bog. And the Fitastic drop-in playtime continues on Fridays from 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in the Wainfleet Arena, and this program runs through August 17th. And I will be attending the World Hepatitis Day and Community Awareness event on behalf of Council. So this is being held at Montebello Park in St. Catharines on Friday, July 27th. So the MPCA will meet tomorrow morning at Balls Falls. Regional Council is this Thursday evening, and our next regular meeting of Council will be August 14th. So we can move to the adoption of the minutes.
That the meeting of the regular, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on July 3rd, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
So I need a mover and a seconder for those. Moved by Alderman Gilmore and seconded by Alderman Hessels. Any errors or omissions or discrepancies? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. And now we'll move on to our first staff report. Oh, sorry, I thought we did them all together. I apologize.
That the minutes of the special meeting of council held on July 4th, 2018 be adopted as circulated.
So I need a mover and a seconder for those. Moved by Alderman Hessels and seconded by Alderman Conk. Any errors or omissions on those minutes? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Now we can go into our staff reports.
That administrative staff report ASR-025-2018 Region of Niagara tax rate and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Conk, seconded by Alderman Hessels. Any questions or discussion on this one? Alderman Conk?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Adam, for this report. I have a couple of questions. Is there anywhere in here, and I didn't see it, so if you did put it in, I apologize. Is there anywhere in here where you outlined how the levy, so I'm thinking 41 years ago, was established and how they decided that levy was going to be determined?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Conk. No, I didn't put the history of tax levies back to 41 years ago in the report. And I don't have that information in front of me, but basically it was determined that this was the most appropriate way to raise funds for municipalities, kind of taking out any sort of biases or things like that. But the property assessments prior to, I think, the 1990s was all over the map, and that's when MPAC got involved. The province set up that organization to establish sort of the kind of throughout all Ontario same formula to be applied to all properties throughout the province. But in terms of how the original tax rate, my understanding would be that it would be the same sort of way where municipalities determined what their true costs were going to be for the year, and then when it was determined to use assessment values as the factor to determine the rate, then that assessment value, whatever period that municipality was using at the time, because it was all different, was then applied, or the total expenses were divided by that assessment value to determine the rate, and then that rate was applied to each individual property that had their own assessment to it. But the formula has been the same, as far as I know, since the very kind of beginning on that. I know originally when they were setting it up, there was kind of, talks about could they come up with a mechanism that was similar to our income tax, where it's based on earnings, but ultimately they decided that it's based on property value, and have gone through that way ever since.
Okay, so if I can continue, Madam Mayor. So when I first was elected to office, I believe at that point in time, we were paying 42 cents on every dollar, and now it's 46 cents. So how is that increment determined? Is it cost of living?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so the breakdown between the three, I guess, components of our tax bill, so our municipality, Township of Wainfleet's portion, the region's portion, and the education portion,
Yeah.
that sort of percentage could change based on the increases in taxes for each of the three portions of it in relation to each other. So, for example, if the township decided to double the amount of revenue that we were going to generate from property taxes, our rate would increase, and the region and the education component overall percentages would decrease. So it's sort of the 46 versus 42 before, it's in relation to us. So what's that suggesting? It's suggesting that the region's kind of component is rising at a higher rate than our component.
Okay, so we did hear a couple of regional councillors talk about being flush with cash. So one talked about $140 million, and another councillor talked about $270 million. So should either one of those figures be accurate, meaning that they meant that they had extra money in the coffers besides what was being submitted by each municipality? So that tells me that we're being over-levied. Would you agree with that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Conk, that's a complicated question. The first thing, all municipalities within their operating budget include contributions to reserves for future, whether it be capital or operating costs. The region is no different. They do the same. They also use some of those, just like Wainfleet uses some of their reserves each year to kind of offset and keep the rates relatively consistent year over year, or only a marginal kind of increase year over year. In terms of cash, like I did look at the 2017 financial statements for the region, and they do have $143 million in cash. But having said that, they have lots of liabilities as well, lots of future debt that they have payments that they need to make on. And when you look at their statement of financial position, they are in a net debt position, which suggests that they have less assets than they do liabilities. So I wouldn't say that they're flush with cash. They do have cash set aside for future commitments, and they do have a large cash balance, but they also do have large payments that are coming up on capital projects and things. So they'd be better to kind of walk through it. And I was talking to William, and maybe it's worthwhile for us to reach out to them to see if they want to come to our council and talk about their financials. But it's tricky. Like the municipal finances it's a delicate balance, and we always have to kind of think to the future as well as the present while we plan things. So
I don't disagree with that. So having said that, if we were to reach out to the region, would they give us any different information than you've already given us in this report?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Conk, I can't speak to them. Like, certainly if we reached out to them, I would let them know kind of what I've provided to them. But I think you're going to get probably fairly similar answers with respect to
kind of where their money's going. They would certainly be able to provide more details into what each of their specific reserves is kind of earmarked for, which would represent a large portion of that balance. I do know, like, their financial statements, and looking at them, they do show the breakdown of each one of those. Obviously, the financial statements don't provide the history of when they were created and sort of, and you can kind of see year over year if they've changed, if they've gone up, if they've gone down, things like that. But a large portion of the reserves is really earmarked for capital, future capital costs. And with their debt, their strategy kind of for debt, and one that they've been encouraging the local municipalities to also kind of adopt, is that in the year that they propose to use debt or incur debt for a capital project, they also start collecting their debt carrying costs charges from the residents. So that can generate some reserves, because they might not necessarily issue the debt in the same year that they said they're going to issue the debt.
Yep.
Similar to us with our arena and certain projects like that, we budgeted to use debt, but we haven't issued that debt yet. So in their case, they would have collected a couple of years of property taxes related to repaying that debt, but haven't issued the debt. But they put that in a reserve so that it will be used kind of going forward. So it really depends. I mean, if there are sort of specific questions that council wants them to answer, we can certainly kind of put those forward to them ahead of time to see if we get different answers. But it really depends on, like, the detail that you're kind of want to get into. Like, high level, you probably get a very similar response, maybe a little more eloquent from them, I don't know. But the nitty gritty, they would know more than I certainly would about their finances.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions on this report? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Next report.
That building staff report BSR-010-2018, re-monthly statistical report, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Gilmore. Any questions or discussion on this report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That bylaw enforcement staff report BESR-018-2018, re-monthly statistical report, May 2018, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Dykstra, seconded by Alderman Conk. Any questions on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That bylaw enforcement staff report BESR-019-2018, re-monthly statistical report, June 2018, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Gilmore, seconded by Alderman Hessels. Any question or discussion on that one? Did I see Alderman Dykstra's hand up? Alderman Dykstra.
I apologize, Madam Mayor, I didn't have my hand up for a question.
Okay. All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That bylaw enforcement staff report BESR-013-2018, read noise bylaw, and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Dykstra, seconded by Alderman Conk. Any questions or discussion on this one? Alderman Hessels.
Yeah, I see this is going to come as a staff report, the next council meeting. So is there any way we can get it out to the the general public that this report, like, I don't think we're voting on the report today as is it?
Yeah, I think we are with the attached bylaw.
Oh, okay, I thought I saw August 14th on there someplace.
I'll get Will to speak to it just for clarity.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The staff report is being considered this evening with a draft bylaw attached to it. In the event that council is supportive of the report and the draft bylaw, the bylaw will return to the next council meeting in August for formal adoption and consideration at that time.
Yeah. And I guess it's been out there, I don't know, it's just like, once these reports come as a staff report, people get a little bit excited and they come with ideas, so that's why I'm not sure if there's that opportunity yet before we pass it into a bylaw.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just as a bit of history, this report is actually, I think this is the third time that it's come back to council, and the last two times it was deferred with some recommended changes and further investigation. One of the options that's available to you at this time is that if you wish to provide direction to staff to sort of, again, consult with the public about the bylaw before actually enacting it, that is certainly one of the options that's available. So we can certainly do that if that's the direction from council.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't like to really drag it on either, and I guess if there hasn't been any people coming to staff with any issues with it that you know of, so I'm pretty sure probably after this there might be, but I don't know, I guess I'll just let it be then.
Okay, any further questions or comments about this report? All right, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried.
That bylaw enforcement staff report BESR-020-2018 SPCA campaign and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
So I need a mover and a seconder for this one. Moved by Alderman Conk, seconded by Alderman Dykstra. Any questions or comments on this one? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that is carried. Now our final report.
That fire staff report FSR-003-2018 Refire Department establishing and regulating bylaw and the recommendations contained therein be adopted as circulated.
Oh, okay, yep. So I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Alderman Gilmore, seconded by Alderman Conk. Chief, did you want to speak to this, or?
Just briefly, Your Worship, we've put this bylaw together arising out of a coroner's inquest into 2 training deaths of firefighters or firefighter students. And following that coroner's inquest, there was a recommendation from the Office of the Fire Marshal that every municipality review their establishing and regulating bylaw. And quite frankly, it's a risk management tool for the municipality to clearly define what the fire department does, and that's what we've crafted into this report. So it's very clear what we do. It's much like our level of service statement on the website as well, so that there's no expectation that we provide a higher level of service, say with water rescue, than we actually do. On the civil liability side, in the past, municipalities have been challenged because there was an expectation that they were providing a high level of service when perhaps they were not actually doing that. This document has been put together to clearly define what the level of service is and what the capabilities of the department are. So that's the first part of my comment. The second part of my comment is you talked briefly at opening about how busy the department was over the past weekend. So I'm coming up on being here 3 months, maybe a bit more than that. And my observation is that the residents are very pleased with the level of service that's provided. So you're already meeting the expectation. We're just clearly delineating what the level is, and we're complying with the suggestion from the Office of the Fire Marshal.
Okay, any questions? Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Chief, I was just wondering if you could clarify, part of the report under financial considerations, it talks about council updating our level of service if we ever wanted to do that we could require further equipment, blah, 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 as well as training and staffing. Could you elaborate? Because I do believe that we've been while funding our fire department to a level of service. And I wouldn't want anybody to read this report and think that we haven't been throwing good money, good dollars at equipment and training for our firefighters. Could you just elaborate on the financial considerations?
Thank you for the question, Alderman. Through you, Your Worship. I want to be crystal clear that the investments that this municipality has made in its fire department for the last 3 or 4 years have been substantive, they've been practical, and they meet the needs of the community. And that's the test for me as a fire chief and for you as a council. The money that you have invested in your fire department has been invested wisely. It's modernized your fleet. You're well on your way with your firefighters to meeting the training and certification needs that will become mandatory next year, and you're well placed to continue to move forward. The intent of my comment with respect to financial considerations was, if you go forward as a fire department and say that you want to improve something, it might be hire a public educator. That when the fire chief were to come forward with that recommendation, there's always a cost associated with the recommendation to improve service. I'm not suggesting there's a need to improve service, and my experience in the municipality, quite frankly, is the residents are pleased with the level of service. I don't think that a 2-week period has gone by that I haven't heard from somebody about the public's practical experience and their thanks as late as yesterday morning over on 18 Side Road for the efforts of the firefighters and the organization of the fire department. So I want to be crystal clear that your investment has been wise. Your firefighters are well trained, they're well educated, and they're highly motivated. They're very enthusiastic, and I think that that was demonstrated over the last 96 or 124 hours.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Chief, I'm looking at Appendix A, which is the breakdown of the department. Can you kind of clue me in here with regards to, we've got administrative assistant and deputy fire chief under the fire chief, but there doesn't seem to be a line running down from the deputy fire chief to the next line underneath. Should there be? Is the deputy fire chief must be in charge of something?
Oh, the deputy fire chief's very busy, Alderman. The deputy fire chief is strictly responsible for the emergency operations side and the enforcement and community services side of the department.
Right, okay.
And I will work with the admin assistant to make that very clear. So the deputy is responsible for the inspections that are required, especially the high-risk inspections, and also the emergency operations side of the fire department.
Okay, so basically the right-hand side of the lower part of the chart.
Yes, we do have a volunteer firefighter that delivers the training package. He's identified as training officer part-time.
Yep.
And the deputy works with that person to ensure that the training is compliant, not just with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, but the pending regulation for training and certification.
Excellent, thank you so much.
Any other questions from council? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that is carried. So now we'll move on to correspondence. And we did have a couple that were referred to us. So the first one, 147, regarding indirectly and directly regarding the delegation we had at the last council meeting. Staff just reminded me in our pre-council meeting that we do have a report in the works from that delegation. So I would suggest we receive it for information, and then we can include it in our deliberation when that comes back. So can I get a mover for that? Moved by Alderman Hessel, second by Alderman Conk. All those in favor? That is carried. And then we have 148. So I don't know if anybody wants to speak to this one or has any questions, or how we want to, if we want to receive it or if we want to refer it to the grant policy, or how we want to deal with this one. Alderman Dykstra.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I know a little bit about this the correspondence piece that was sent to council, as the past year's juvenile team had won the All-Ontario final, and it had also, Wainfleet had also won it back in 2008. At that time, the municipality had supported their purchase of their jackets. So I think that's the basis of why we've received correspondence tonight, because it has not happened since 2008, and in the past, council has supported the championship. So I don't know whether Adam wanted to speak to it or what I know we have a new policy surrounding grants and requests for monies, but this is because of a championship win from a community team.
Maybe we can get Adam to speak to it. I thought council in 2008 did not, so they did. No, they didn't? Like, we weren't on council, but I do remember, to be quite honest, it was a bit contentious. And so I know Alderman Hessels was on council at that time. So I think maybe we should look, I'm sure we can look back and see how it was supported, but I think, yeah, we do have this new granting process. So Adam, maybe if you want to speak to it.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, to all of council. I don't know how it was dealt with in 2008. We can certainly go back and look at not only the council meeting minutes, but also what we did, if any, in terms of a contribution to the purchase of the jackets. We do have the grant policy. We have been receiving requests kind of quite regularly lately with regard to this, and council has chosen to point them to our policy and encouraging them to apply again in the fall. So that might be something to consider. We're not that far off, I guess, from the next intake process. Typically, we'll start promoting it again in September, but if council wishes to do otherwise, they can certainly do that as well.
Alderman Hessels, you wanted to?
Well, I'd say we should probably defer this, have them look it up, see if we did give that juvenile team money that time. And I believe that time, I don't know how many Wainfleet kids are actually on this team compared to that time too. I think there's quite a difference on players that are actually from Wainfleet. But my recollection is that we didn't. I know the fire department gave money, but I do not believe council did. But if we can look it up, then I don't really have a problem, but I'd like to be consistent that we don't do one and not the other.
So should we refer this correspondence, then receive and refer it to the treasurer? Yeah, and then have it, okay. So can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Conk. So we're gonna receive it, refer it to the treasurer's department to do some research, and then bring it back and we can decide what to do. Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay, and there was another piece of correspondence, 145, and we don't have to, we don't need a resolution of council, but even offline, that was the nomination of outstanding physicians and surgeons, and so I had some ideas, so, I can send an email out to council, because Will checked and we don't need it to be a resolution of council, but I thought maybe we've got a few physicians living in Wainfleet, so maybe we could look into that. Okay, any correspondence? Does anyone else have anything they want to raise? Okay, so now we'll go into the bylaws.
That the following bylaws be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 24th day of July 2018. Bylaw number 038-2018, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 004-2015, being a bylaw to appoint members to the Township of Wainfleet Public Library Board. Bylaw number 039-2018, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 025-2013, being a bylaw to prohibit and regulate the discharge of guns and firearms in the Township of Wainfleet.
Okay, so I need a mover and a seconder for those bylaws. Moved by Alderman Hessel, seconded by Alderman Dykstra. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, and that's carried. Any notices of motion? Okay. And then we do have one proclamation, and I'll just look to Amber, so I am going to read this, and then do we need a mover and a seconder for it? No? Okay. Okay, so World Hepatitis Day, July 28th, 2018, whereas an estimate of about 600,000 Canadians living with hepatitis B or C can potentially develop cirrhosis, liver failure, liver cancer, and related illnesses, whereas Ontario has over 110,000 people living with hepatitis B or C, both of which are slow and progressive diseases, and whereas there are vaccines available for hepatitis A and B, emerging hepatitis C treatment therapies can cure nearly 95% of cases, and whereas World Hepatitis Day provides an opportunity to reach out to millions of Canadians and encourage hepatitis testing, provide treatment and care for those affected, while paving the way towards elimination of hepatitis as a public health concern in Canada by 2030. Therefore, I, April Jeffs, Mayor of Wainfleet, do hereby proclaim July 28th, 2018 Hepatitis Awareness Day in the Township of Wainfleet. Okay. It's a little different than we've done in the past, but that was the way they wanted it. So, okay. So now we're moving on, other business. Alderman Dykstra?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I've had some correspondence and some phone calls and from some residents on I think it's Marshview Drive, proposed subdivision over here in the Wainfleet Hamlet and in the village here. And I actually went out and visited the site last night. So one of the concerns was, I know in the past there had been years back already, this has kind of been an ongoing area of potential subdivision. There was a sign, the current sign is located back on Marshville Drive, so the average resident in Wainfleet wouldn't see the location of the sign. And I think that's part of the planning policy, that the sign has to appear on the, and correct me, I know the planner's not here, but I think it has to appear on the road that the development is happening. But I was wondering if we were able to get something over on Highway 3, if that would be possible.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is essentially correct. Generally, the installation of those public notice boards are put at the sort of entrance or at the front portion of the development. The Highway 3 portion would be sort of the back end, but we can certainly look at the potential of getting enhanced signage. We would need to touch bases with MTO to ensure that it meets all their requirements on Highway 3, but we will certainly proceed in that direction.
And then if I may continue as well, on the sign, there wasn't a lot of detail. I went and looked at it last night. There was no lot sizes indicated, or it was just basically a colored sketch of the layout. And just wondering, would there be more information added to that sign, or is that just a notification sign? Or I just wondered if you knew, would there be more detail included?
Through you, Madam Mayor, normally those signs are indicated just to provide general awareness of a proposal or an application that will be coming before council. The details about specific lot sizes, locations, configurations, all that sort of stuff is stuff that comes further and is stuff that will be made public as part of the review process that council will be going through once it proceeds. It proceeds with the processing of the application under the Planning Act.
So if I may continue, Madam Mayor, sorry. So then just to be clear from your statement, this will be coming to council. This is not a done deal. This is an application, correct?
That is correct, sir.
And then, so then there will be an opportunity possibly for a public meeting and that sort of, all those sort of organized events?
Through you, Madam Mayor, definitely the Planning Act requires a minimum of one public meeting. for any such application. And depending upon the nature of the application and sort of the process that unfolds, there may be other opportunities such as public information centers that are held, perhaps several public meetings, and so on.
And if I make just one last comment, and it's kind of general, I mean, it's related to this, but because of the amount of back and forth I have seen on this particular subdivision, is our official plan clearly attached to our website? For the residents that are not familiar with the official plan, what would their best way of finding that? Because that is Hamlet. I just wondered, you know, if when people are having questions, just so that it's clear that they understand what parts of our municipality are slated for possible development.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, on the township's website, under the government heading, there is a section for the planning department, and on the left-hand side of the screen, both the township's zoning bylaw and official plan are available online, and I'm just scrolling through and clicking on each of the links to confirm that those are there and active.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other business? Alderman Conk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just one piece of other business. I had a call from Kathy Peters yesterday, who is part of the art crawl that takes place August 11th and the 12th. And because of this parking issue, she's wondering if, because there are only 2 places this year along the lakeshore, and it's down in that section of lakeshore that we're having issues with, she's worried about parking tickets being issued to those people who are going into her home and the other home that has art available for people to look at, if we can direct staff to please not ticket those cars. And they're only going to be like 15 minutes at each place, but there could be like 20 cars all day long.
We had that happen once on Augustine Road, where there were people part of the art crawl and they got ticketed, and that didn't go over well. So, yeah, is there something that we can?
So through you, Madam Mayor, Alderman Conk, since 2000, when the first parking bylaw was enacted, from Cement Road to, I believe it's Station Road, is what the municipality is responsible for, has been no parking on both sides. However, since council was the one that enacted those rules, council can make a recommendation that we postpone enforcement in a certain area. I believe parking is a liability, so I strongly urge council on making a recommendation like that. However, that is council's right to do so, but that would have to be in writing to me for certain days in certain areas. One recommendation, if council does wish to do something like that, have a look at the sides and limit one side only, because it is a very narrow road. There is lots of safety concerns there. Like I said, liability is a big issue. But council does have that option to waive parking restrictions for a short amount of time.
What date is it? So if we were going to do this, we'd have to do it tonight then, by way of motion? I think August 14th is the next council meeting. I know we did talk, when we had the incident on Augustine Road, we talked about in the future giving the homeowners who were hosting the people coming, like the studio owners, little tickets to give to the people to put on their dash or whatever, that they're exempt, instead of, I don't know if that's the same difference as just waiving the parking for a few hours that day. But I just thought that was one of the things that we discussed back when we had that issue a couple of years ago. So I'll look to Will.
Just checking the calendar, Madam Mayor, and yes, the next council meeting isn't until July, or is not until August 18th? 14th.
Yeah.
Sorry, my apologies. As the bylaw enforcement officer indicated, it is within the scope of council's authority to waive or provide direction regarding the enforcement of the parking bylaw. I would emphasize, as indicated by the officer, that the rules or the establishment of the no parking zones, those are generally undertaken following a review of the roads, of speeds, of availability of parking, and eliminating or reducing a restriction in those areas is a true liability in the event that something were to happen, which could expose the municipality to some potential for lawsuit or otherwise. From that perspective, staff would sort of recommend against it. That said, it is within your jurisdiction to do that, and if that is the sort of will of council, then a motion to that effect would certainly be the way to proceed.
Is it, so we're talking right by Quarry Road, that stretch of Lakeshore, is that? So, and there's 2 spots there?
Just 2 this year, yeah.
Because it is bad, but I'm like a bad area to have people parking, because then you got cyclists going through, and so I do tend to agree, but is there a way, and again, maybe this is a long shot, of taking some of the parking at the Reeves Bay area? Well, I don't know how you would keep an eye on it. I was gonna say in sectioning it off for a couple hours so that those people could use that. I don't know what, like, again, I don't know how you'd enforce that, though. People could just go and park there anyway, but even if we made an attempt to kind of have that available, because this only happens once a year.
Through you, Madam Mayor, something like that can be done, like you suggested in the past. They would just register at the home, get a ticket from, or in advance get a ticket, and then if it's only going to be for a couple hours, I'd have no problem having our bylaw officer just out there monitoring. You'd have to give a ticket to him, and then you can park there. So we can block a section off. That is an option if council so wishes to choose.
I don't know what council thinks about. Alderman Hassels.
Yeah. I'm not sure the drivable portion of the road and road allowance, is there any room, or is it pretty well the road drivable portion is right up to the road allowance?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Lakeshore Road is very narrow, windy. There's some areas that there's a lot of road allowance, and there's some areas that there's no road allowance, and it's very sporadic. So without looking at a map, it would be very hard to see. But we can definitely research it and email council and see what we can do going forward.
Yeah. Well, that was my question. If there's lots of open space past the drivable portion of the road allowance, I wouldn't see the real problem. But if there isn't, if cars are going to have half their vehicle or a bit of their vehicle on the road, I would say, yeah, we don't want to get into that.
I think Richard wanted to comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to Alderman Hessels. That portion to the east of Quarry Road is very narrow. There are sections, because that's along where the cottage fire was, if you recall. There's only maybe a foot from the edge of the portion of the road. So it's difficult to pass a bicycle, let alone to have a vehicle parked on that edge. As Alderman Conk and the mayor suggested, maybe we can block off a portion of Reeves Bay parking area that they can utilize that area, but to actually park on that road allowance in that portion, I don't suggest it, because they will be on the road allowance.
Alderman Conk.
So if I was to pass along the phone number and the 2 addresses to either one of you 2 gentlemen, would you be able to call Mrs. Peters and work something out? Is that within the confines of what we can do? Okay, I can do that.
Okay, perfect. Alderman Hassels.
Yeah. Would they need council's direction to save those spots for certain, so that maybe Alderman Conk will want to include that in her?
So maybe make a motion, Alderman Conk, to reserve those spots, have it enforced for that day, and pass along the contact information to, okay. Seconder for that, Alderman Hassels. All those in favor, and that's carried. Okay. Any other business? Okay, seeing none, then I will look to the clerk to read the whatever, to go into closed meeting.
That council now move into closed session to discuss A, item under section 239, 2E of the Municipal Act 2001, litigation or potential litigation, NCDSB development charges appeal. B, item under section 239, 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, recruiting matter. C, minutes of the closed meeting of council held July 3rd, 2018, and July 4th, 2018.
Okay, a mover and a seconder to go into closed session. Moved by Alderman Gilmore, seconded by Alderman Conk. All those in favor, and that's carried.